I used to think love was a steady hum, something you tuned once and let run in the background. We had a playlist for cooking, a shared calendar full of color-coded plans, a Sunday routine with oat lattes and a produce market that smelled like basil and warm rain. From the outside, we looked choreographed. Inside, little drafts moved through the house, invisible until they lifted a corner of paper, made a door click shut by itself. The first draft was a sentence she didn't finish. "It'd be nice if you..." And then she smiled and kissed my temple like punctuation. I didn't ask what the rest was. I didn't want a new assignment. Her checklists weren't on paper. They were the way she watched me after I promised to call my mum back and didn't. The way her fingers paused over the sink tap when I left a pan to soak, which is another word for forget. She never nagged. That was the problem. She just took notes, and I felt graded on an exam I hadn't studied for, questions printed in a language I swore I knew. When we met, I loved how careful she was. She kept movie tickets in a jar. She knew when the fairy horn would sound and lifted her head a heartbeat before it did. Careful can turn into conditional if you're not paying attention. "You're tired," she'd say, and set a glass of water in front of me like a tiny rescue. I'd drink and call it love. But some nights, she went to bed early with a book turned face down, the spine gently scolded. "You coming?" she'd ask. I'd say, 5 minutes, and mean it until a message popped up from a client, until the world called me useful. The bed cooled. The book stayed closed. The checklist gained an invisible tick. I didn't notice the moment we stopped laughing at the same thing. Jokes became translations. She said, "We should pick a weekend to visit your dad." And I heard, "You never pick me." I said, "Let's try that Italian place." And she heard, "I can't hear you saying you're tired." It wasn't all wrong, it wasn't all right. We started rehearsing in our heads and performing to each other with the wrong scripts. One Thursday, after a day that ate my patience in small, polite bites, I came home to find her measuring flour, quiet as snow. "Pancakes for dinner?" I asked, trying for light. "Comfort," she said. The word hit a bruise. I wanted to be comfort. I was a complication she'd learned to manage. The batter rested. So did we, on opposite sides of a conversation that hadn't been invited to speak yet. I flipped the first pancake too soon and watched it tear. She reached over, turned down the heat, and said, "It's okay." It was and it wasn't. I pressed my thumb into the edge of the pan, felt how long it took to cool, and wondered whether we could lower the temperature on us, or whether we'd both learn to stand too close to the burner. We ate pancakes with lemon and sugar, like kids near a carnival. She smiled. I smiled back. Somewhere between the second and third, she said, "Can we talk this weekend?" I nodded before my heart had decided. Weekend sounded like a place you travel to with bags. I pictured us packing carefully, her checklists, my apologies, the shirts we liked on each other because they proved we'd paid attention once. I wanted to unzip something and let the warm air out, let whatever we were breathe. I wiped my plate clean and promised to buy more lemons in the morning. The promise sounded small and honest. It was the first thing that felt like a path. We didn't talk that weekend. We performed errands like a duet, precise and unadventurous. At the market she weighed tomatoes in her palms, declared one smelled like mid-January, which I knew was her private code for the first week we kissed. I handed her a bag and tried to catch the shape of that memory as if it were still falling. On the walk back we split a paper bag of hot chips. She shook extra salt on my half, knowing I'd pretend I don't like it. I thanked her with a grin that felt borrowed. The talk arrived on Monday, a day notorious for truths that can't hold any longer. She was at the table with her laptop closed, fingers interlaced as if she expected to pray but decided against it. "I want to say this right," she began, and my stomach prepared to be haunted by the phrasing forever. "You're kind. You're generous with other people. You hold space for strangers. But when it's us, I feel like I'm bargaining for attention in a shop that only takes exact change." I opened my mouth to argue with the metaphor and closed it. She wasn't wrong, she wasn't entirely right. I've been giving you what I know how to give, I said, struggling to keep accusation out of the sentence. Rides to the airport. Notes in your coat pocket. Fixing the kitchen drawer when it jammed. Buying the good coffee even when I pretend it's ridiculous. She smiled at that. We both liked the ridiculous beans. I know, she said softly. Those are lovely. But I want the part of you that looks at me first, not last. I want a version of us that isn't measured in favors. The dishwasher thumped as if offering commentary on chores as care. I stared at the squat light blooming on its front. What if I don't have more? I asked. What if this is my more? It was an honest fear, that my bandwidth was built wrong, my settings factory fixed. She reached across the table and folded my hand into both of hers, a pause button on panic. Then we name that, she said. We build inside it, not around it. But we stopped pretending. We tried. For a week we left our phones in a bowl by the door, a tiny altar to our better selves. We cooked with music low enough to talk over. We walked after dinner and counted dogs. On Friday, I went to bed when she did, and I didn't dream of emails. Saturday, my father called and asked if we could come by on Sunday afternoon to look at the fence he swore was leaning. I almost said yes without checking. The reflex to be useful is so strong it looks like love. I looked at her instead. She blinked, waited. Can we do Monday? I asked into the receiver. Sunday's booked. He harumphed, then agreed. Proud of you, she mouthed, and I felt a small plant inside me tilt towards sun. But the world has a way of noticing when you're testing new boundaries and sending a quiz. On Tuesday, my boss moved a meeting to 6 p.m. Quick chat, he said, which we both understood meant longer than dinner. I watched the message pulse. She was at the counter, cutting mango with a concentration that made the knife look like a paintbrush. Go, she said before I answered. I can tell you're going to say yes. No heat, just an inventory of patterns. I can say no, I argued. You won't, she said gently, and I hated that she was right and loved that she knew me so well it felt like skin. I went. The meeting sprawled. On the walk back, the city had that wet glow that makes reflection look like handwriting. I typed a message. I'm sorry. Be home soon. She wrote back. Okay. There's mango. 3 syllables that contain permission and resignation and an invitation to do better all at once. I put my phone away and let the rain pinprick my cheeks, 1,000 tiny wake-up taps. At home, the mango was bright and soft. She handed me a piece and kissed the back of my neck. Weekend, she said, not a question, more like a warning we could still choose to keep. Weekend arrived like a quiet guest, shoes in hand, the kind who lets the door ease shut. We made coffee and drank it on the floor because the sun hit that angle near the rug and made the dust look like a season falling. We picked the Italian place for dinner and dressed as if we were auditioning for the earlier version of us. She wore the necklace I bought in a market by the sea. I wore the sweater she always called my behaving knit, because it made me look like someone who didn't interrupt. The restaurant hummed with stories being edited mid-sentence. Our waitress had nail polish the color of eucalyptus and a tiny lightning bolt tattoo that looked like a promise to herself. We ordered pasta and a bottle of wine we could pronounce. At first we talked like tourists in our own life, safe landmarks, familiar jokes, a photo from last summer held up like a passport. Then the plates arrived and we stopped pretending we were on the brochure. I think I've spent months trying to keep you comfortable, she said, tracing the rim of her glass. The thing is, comfort isn't the same as closeness. Sometimes comfort just means I'm not asking for anything. I want you to ask, I said. My voice surprised me with how certain it sounded. I need you to. Otherwise I end up performing good instead of being present. She smiled with relief and a little grief, like someone hearing their own name after too long. Okay, she said, and inhaled as if diving. I want more slowness that's not an accident. I want you to tell me the truth even if it makes us late. I want you to look at me when you're deciding who gets the best of you that day, and sometimes let it be me. And I want you to stop saying we'll see when you mean no. Say no. I can take it. I just can't hold the maybe. The restaurant could have been a church with the way the room softened around her list. Not a demand sheet, a map. I nodded, humbled and a little scared of how much I wanted to rise to it. In return, I said, I need you to stop making a checklist I can't read. If something matters, say it out loud where I can't pretend I didn't hear. And when I get it wrong, and I will, tell me if you see sincerity in the trying, not just failure in the outcome. She reached across the table, pressed her thumb to my wrist where the pulse is honest. Deal, she said. We ate, and we didn't toast anything. We just let the food be warm and simple and exactly what it was. On the walk home, the city felt like a set we could rearrange. She looped her arm through mine and asked, what would slowness look like for you? I pictured mornings where I didn't check my inbox before my breath. I pictured refusing to be a hero at work when it cost me things that didn't applaud. I pictured buying daisies because she hated roses and loved the stubborn cheer of the cheaper flower. At our door, she turned her face up and kissed me the way you kiss someone when the answer might finally stick. Inside, she kicked off her shoes and left them purposefully crooked, a small rebellion against the tidy life that had hidden our ache. The weekend wasn't a cure. It was a door propped open with a book. We stepped through and promised to leave it that way. Promises are easy when the sky behaves. Tuesday cracked them a little. My dad called at lunch, voice thin with the kind of pride that tries not to be a plea. Fence looks worse, he said. Your brother says he'll swing by Wednesday, but I was hoping. I looked at my calendar, all squares pretending to be fate. A client had asked for a quick favor at 5, which meant another 6:30 apology. I closed my laptop and sat still, like movement might knock down something delicate. I can come after work, I told Dad, already rehearsing the speech I'd give at the office. Boundaries, bandwidth, being human. She met me at the door with that look, hope mixed with caution, the way you hold a glass in a crowded room. How's your dad? She asked, and I told her. I want to go. I added. I also want to do it without borrowing time from us. She considered this the way she considers spices, eyes distant, a hand hovering until the right pinch makes itself known. What if I come too? She said. We'll make a thing of it. Fix the fence, then take him for pie. She made it sound like an adventure instead of triage. At work, the favor turned into a swarm. I watched the clock and felt like I was trying to carry water in a sieve. At 4:55 my boss said, "One more thing." And I said, "No." The word landed between us like a dropped set of keys. He blinked. "No," he repeated, as if translating a rare bird call. "No," I said again, gentler. "I'm heading out. Family." He tilted his head, inventorying whether I had become less valuable or more real. "All right," he said finally. "Tomorrow then." I left before the room changed its mind. We drove to Dad's with a toolbox and the kind of courage that looks ordinary until you remember the cost. The fence leaned like a tired commuter. Dad met us in the driveway with a grin that tried to hide his worry. "Didn't want you to fuss," he said to her, grateful and embarrassed in equal portions. She smiled like a nurse in a movie who knows the patient just wants dignity. We worked while magpies heckled, while the late light turned the wood a softer shade. She held the post steady. I hammered new fixings with a rhythm that felt like a language we both understood. After, we took Dad for pie, as promised. He told a story about meeting Mum at a bus stop and losing his ticket on purpose so he'd have an excuse to sit and wait another hour. She laughed, head back, the kind of laugh that makes other people in the diner glance over and soften. I watched them and felt something warm move through me, the ache of seeing a future and liking it. On the drive home she rested her hand at the back of my neck. "Proud of you," she said again, not like a teacher praising neat handwriting, but like a teammate who saw me show up for the whole game. Back at our place, we were tired in a way that made the couch look like an award. She leaned into me and traced circles on my knee with her finger, absent-minded cartography. "I love us when we're like this," she murmured. "Me too," I said. The sentence didn't fix anything. It didn't have to. It named a truth I wanted to keep inviting. We went to bed with quiet bones. Before sleep, she whispered, "Keep saying no when it matters." I promised. The room believed me. So did I, at least for tonight. Drama doesn't usually kick the door down, it nudges. The nudge came as a message from my ex, the one whose name still felt like an old bruise when bumped. "Saw your presentation on the company blog." It read, "Proud of you." A neutral compliment, harmless as a paper plane, except paper can cut if it catches the right angle. I stared too long. She walked in with laundry and saw my face go far away. "Who's that?" she asked, casual the way a tightrope is casual if you don't look down. I told the truth, but flourished it with disclaimers. She reached out. "I didn't expect it. I won't reply." She nodded, then set the basket down and sat on the edge of the bed. "Here's my ask," she said, choosing words like tools. "I don't want to police your history. But if something like that lands in our house, I want you to tell me before I have to notice it on your mouth." I winced at the accuracy. "I will," I said. "I'm sorry." She squeezed my knee. "Thank you. That's all. Also, let's block her." The simplicity of it. I laughed, relief spilling. We blocked. The door clicked soft in my head. 2 days later, her ex messaged her a photo of an old concert poster they'd framed. She handed me the phone without ceremony, as if offering a spoon to stir. "You okay?" I asked. "I am," she said. "Because you're looking at me while I tell you." We stood in the kitchen and marveled at how small the drama looked when we held it up in daylight. We could have hidden it in our pockets and let it grow teeth there. Instead, it looked like a moth. We opened a window. Still, the week frayed us. My boss tested my new no with a big deadline and a meeting I couldn't dodge without punishing people who didn't deserve it. She had a friend in crisis and spent hours on the phone peeling worry off that friend's sentences with patience and tea. We passed each other like mail, notes tucked under magnets. "Leftovers in the fridge, you're doing great, please water basil." Affection became shorthand, which is useful until shorthand starts pretending to be speech. On Friday night, we found ourselves at opposite ends of the couch with our feet touching but our eyes elsewhere. She lowered her phone first. "Are we okay?" she asked, soft as a hand on a bruise. "Yes," I said, and then corrected myself because she had asked for truth, not performance. "We're okay and we're tired. I think we need a proper argument." She smiled, caught off guard. "A proper argument?" "One where we stay in the room," I said. "One that doesn't end because a notification wins." She put her phone face down and sat cross-legged. "All right then," she said, amused and serious. "What's the first complaint?" I took a breath and reached for the thing that had been scratching. "When you say it's fine in that polite way, it feels like I'm failing a test I can't retake." She nodded, absorbing it. "Okay," she said, and then let her own grievance out like a bird that had been tapping the window. "When you say we'll make it work about your time, I feel like the work is me moving around you." We held the two truths up, not as weapons but as weather reports. We argued kindly, which is still an argument, voices getting bigger than smaller, a storm that rinsed us instead of wrecking us. When we were done, we were pink-cheeked and lighter. "Thank you," she said, kissing the corner of my mouth. "For staying." I kissed her back, grateful for the mess that kept us honest. We fell asleep with the window open and the basil watered. The next week started with a kind of clean resolve, the way Monday morning sometimes smells like pencils in a classroom. We'd named things, now we had to live with the names. I set reminders that weren't about tasks but about people. "Call Dad," one said. "Check in on Liam." Another simply said, "Look at her first." At work, I started drawing fences around my hours, discovering that saying, "I can do that Wednesday," turned out not to be a career-ending confession. It was a relief to be human in public. She leaned into honesty too. On Tuesday she texted, "Please don't cook tonight. My brain is soup. Can we be a takeout couple with no shame?" I replied. Noodles on the way. Meet me at the door like we're in a rom-com. She sent back a heart and the gif of a person running badly. We ate on the floor again, Noodles slurping our faces into laughter. Between mouthfuls, she told me she'd said no to a favor from a friend who often mistook her generosity for endless capacity. It felt like taking a breath after holding it without noticing. She said. I raised my carton. To oxygen. We clinked cardboard. But drama hates to be ignored. It showed up in the form of an invitation, our mutual friend's engagement party, the pair who looked at us as if we were an inevitable whisper attached to their shout. The invite glittered with confidence. I RSVP'd yes and then felt the yes echo weirdly in my chest. She read the same vibration in me I couldn't name. What does a yes mean to you right now? She asked. I swallowed. It means I want to learn how to be good at us in rooms where everyone is loudly sure about everything. She smiled tender. Me too. But we don't have to perform for anyone. If we go as we are. We went. The room smelled like champagne and new declarations. People said, finally, and about time. As if the world had been waiting for two people to step into the light and promise each other certainty. I watched couples fit their hands together like proud puzzles. She squeezed my fingers each time my face went far away. When the speeches started, the groom told a story about their hardest month and the choice to stay. The room hushed the way a theater does when the set reveals a secret door. We didn't win by being perfect, he said. We won by not leaving while we were learning. I looked at her and saw the month we were having, its scrapes and small victories. The mango, the fence, the blocking, the noodles, the arguments. She mouthed, us, and I nodded. After the party, we walked home in shoes that pinched and hearts that didn't. On our street, she stopped under the heron mural, the one that always looks like patience. Do you think we'll get married? She asked, not as an announcement, not as a demand. I took a breath big enough to make room. I think we'll keep choosing, I said. I think that's the only version I can promise. If marriage is a series of choices, then maybe yes, someday, if we like who we are when we're choosing. She kissed me with the taste of someone who heard an answer and didn't flinch. At home, she pulled the duvet up to our chins. Let's keep the window open, she said. I like the night air loud. I laughed. You like the world proving it's still there. Exactly, she said, and fell asleep curled toward me like a comma that knows the sentence isn't done. I lay awake, listening to the street breathe, and felt our drama quiet into detail. It would have been neat if the story bent upward from there, as if naming our mess taught it manners. Instead, new angles appeared. My boss offered a trip to Wellington for a week to show the flag. He framed it as trust and praise and a chance to be seen by people who fill spreadsheets that decide futures. I thought about hotel sheets and room service trays with the remains of decisions on them. I thought about her, the bowl by the door, the window open, the basil thriving because someone remembered. I brought it home like a fragile trophy and set it in the middle of the table. A week? She asked, measuring the word. Leaving Sunday, back Saturday? I nodded. It's good, I said. It's not good for us, I added, because the second part needed daylight. She tilted her head. Do you want to go? She asked, and I loved her for not starting with should. I do and I don't, I said. I want to be the person who turns it down for the right reasons. I want to be the person who goes and stays in touch like an adult. I want to not want approval so much. She took my hand. Can we make a plan where either of us is the martyr? She said. If you go, we schedule calls and we don't pretend busy is romantic. If you don't go, you tell your boss in a way that doesn't make me a villain you're saving. The fairness of it calmed me. I pictured telling my boss I was picking depth over breadth this month. I pictured the quiet swagger of returning to them with a spine. I also pictured missing her neck in the morning. The visions wrestled until one stood up and made a speech. I went. We packed the week with intention. She tucked a note into my book, 3 lines that were both poetry and grocery list. I wrote her a letter I didn't fold perfectly and left it under the basil pot. The first night in Wellington, the hotel smelled like someone else's clean. I called her, and we watched the same episode of a show from different beds, narrating the parts that made us snort. When I said goodnight, the silence on the line wasn't lonely. It was a hallway we stood in together. On day 3, the trip turned absurd. A client dinner 8 in the evening, and a fire alarm at 2 a.m. blurred the next morning. My boss praised my steadiness while I pictured her alone with a jar of sauce that wouldn't open. I texted, "How's your sauce?" She replied with a photo of a spoon under hot water, our running joke, applied physics as romance. On day 5, I got quiet and she noticed across the bandwidth. "Tell me," she wrote. I told her I felt like a performer who forgot which role I was meant to be playing. "Be bad at it for an hour," she replied. "I'll still be here." I sat on the hotel carpet and did nothing impressive. It felt like surviving a test I hadn't consented to. When I got home, she met me at the door like the rom-com we ordered. We didn't dramatize the reunion. We put my bag down and ate toast with butter that caught at the back of the throat. "Thank you for going," she said. "Thank you for coming back," I said. The week didn't break us. It taught us a different scale. We slept until noon and woke to a house that smelled like our own breathing. My phone buzzed with my boss's message. "Great job this week." She kissed my jaw and whispered, "Great job this life." I believed her more. Every relationship has an archive, moments you revisit to confirm the story. We started building ours with intention. Not just firsts, but second chances, the first honest no, the second time it didn't scare us, the first argument we finished, the second that felt like progress instead of points. One evening, we spread ticket stubs and receipts on the rug and told stories into them until they became ours again instead of proof. She held up the concert ticket from the night my car broke down, and we sang in the rain while waiting for a tow. "I was cold and happy," she said. "I was pretending not to be cold and happy," I said, and she bumped my shoulder with the stub. Then came the kind of fight that can unmake the archive if you let it. It started with nothing. I left the laundry in the machine too long. She rewashed it. I said thank you in the voice you use for wait staff you don't look at. She went stiff. "Don't outsource gratitude," she said. The sentence was a bell only we could hear. I tried a joke that arrived dressed as defense, and she flinched. We stood in the hallway like two people stuck in opposite doorways. "Say the thing," she said, not cruel, just tired. I stared at a scuff mark where our suitcase had kissed the wall, and finally pulled the thorn. "Sometimes I feel like love is a performance review I'm failing. I want to be good without being watched." She breathed out so slowly I could hear it travel. "And sometimes I feel invisible until a task makes me visible," she replied. "My love looks like actions because words failed me before. I'm trying to learn your language. I need you to narrate, not just do." We stood there with two truths, both heavy, either fatal. I stepped closer until my forehead pressed hers. "I'm scared that if I stop doing, I'll disappear," I admitted. "I'm scared that if I stop noticing, I'll disappear you," she said. The hallway felt bigger around those confessions, as if the house slid its walls back an inch to make room. We compromised like people who want to keep the archive. I agreed to name my care out loud when I offered it, to let it be seen without tallying points. She agreed to ask for care without apologizing, to trust that asking didn't make her a burden. We wrote a small sign in the kitchen. "Say the thing before the thing breaks." It became silly and holy. When I brought her tea, I said, "This is me loving you." When she folded my hoodie, she said, "This is me loving you." We overused it until we didn't need to anymore. That night, we lay on the floor again because the rug had become our negotiation table and our lullaby. "Tell me a future," she whispered into the dim. I told her one with mornings that begin with a look instead of a list, with dinners we burn and eat anyway, with fences we fix for other people and buses we miss on purpose. She told me one with a little house that never quite stays tidy and matching mugs we stole from a cafe because the baristas said we looked like we'd keep them safe. We fell asleep in the middle of our futures, the present warm under our backs, the window open to a city that kept breathing for us, with us, through us, toward whatever the next section would ask us to say out loud. We scheduled a date night that didn't require reservations, a blanket on the lounge floor, candles stubby from past promises, a playlist we built by trading songs like postcards. I chose the one that always makes her laugh at the drum fill. She chose the one that sounds like a window opening. We ate soft cheese and sliced pears, and for a while the room held only good electricity. Then my phone, face down on the shelf like a well-behaved child, lit with a glow I felt on my skin. A calendar reminder I'd forgotten to cancel. Quarterly goals, draft due tonight. It wasn't the reminder. It was the part of me that stood up inside, already reaching for the laptop. She watched that old version of me rise like steam and set her pear down. "Stay," she said simply. I did, but I did it with my jaw. The stupidest fight finds the quickest door. "It'll take 15 minutes," I said. "Then I'll be fully here." She shook her head. "You cannot barter presents with the future. Either we're here or we're not." I felt accused and cornered, two feelings that always dragged me into performance. "You know I'm trying," I said too loud. "You know I turned down a trip this year so I could be this." I waved at the candles, hating the gesture as it left my hand. She flinched. "I didn't ask you to turn down a life," she said. "I asked you to stop choosing me with the part of you that's resentful." We stared at each other like climbers on opposite cliffs. Somewhere a neighbor laughed at something easy. I took a breath and said the hardest useful sentence I know. "I need 10 to put this down without lying about it." She studied me, weighing whether the ask came from fear or sincerity. 10, she agreed. "Not 15. Not just a second. 10, and then you tell me what you wrote so I know what was bigger than us for those minutes." I typed like a person being timed for oxygen, surprised at how little I needed to say. When I came back, I read the 3 sentences out loud, my voice losing its drama with each line. She listened, nodded, and lifted the blanket so I could tuck back under. "Thank you for coming back on purpose," she whispered. We lay there until the candles drowned themselves in their own small seas. "Before sleep," she said, "next time, tell me before the light turns on in you. I want to be jealous of something real, not a ghost." I promised, and for once the promise didn't feel like a leash, it felt like a map I could actually follow. On Wednesday, Dad called at dawn with the apology voice he saves for bad timing. "Don't panic," he began, which primes the body for exactly that. "Just a wobble. The GP wants me in for tests." I sat on the edge of the bed while the room gathered itself. She woke at the sound of my hair standing up and put a hand on my back. "We'll go," she said, already halfway into her hoodie. "Hospitals smell like lemon and surrender." We found Dad in a chair pretending it was a throne. The nurse adjusted his cuff with the gentle competence that always undoes me. "You've brought your board," she said, nodding at the paperback he clutched like a life raft. He winked. "I play along?" I made a joke about him flirting. He made a joke about earning it. She squeezed my knee under the chair. The tests were boring in the way you want them to be when boredom means nothing dramatic is happening yet. While we waited for results, I took a call in the hallway I shouldn't have. My boss again, offering solutions disguised as requests. "If you can jump on a quick Zoom at noon, we'll nail this." The word nail made me want to throw my phone into the potted plant beside the vending machine. I said, "I'm at the hospital." He said, "Of course. Send notes then?" I said, "No. I'll be out today." It felt like lifting something heavy that had my name on it and putting it down in exactly the right place. Back in the room, she read Dad's chart upside down like a spy, and he pretended not to notice. Results came back with a sigh rather than a siren. "Adjust the meds," the doctor said. "Walk more. Worry less." Dad grunted. "The last one's not a pill?" We laughed, the kind that leaks relief. In the car, I reached for her hand and found it like a light switch. "Thank you," I said. "For being the version of us that shows up." She kissed my knuckles, tender enough to make the road shimmer. "We can be dramatic," she said. "But we're also sturdy. I like both." That night, I called Liam and told him everything in the order it happened, not the order that made me look useful. After, I sat on the floor and let the day settle into my muscles. She slid down next to me. "Do you want to cry?" she asked. "I want to not have to," I said. She nodded and leaned her head to mine. "We can want and not need at the same time," she said. We stayed like that, quiet and unbrave, until wanting felt less like a cliff and more like a path. Therapy entered the chat like a friend who'd been waiting politely in the lobby. We joked about it, both veterans of our own solo couches, both wary of inviting a stranger into our private translations. "Let's go before we need it like an ambulance," she suggested. "Go while it can be a vitamin." I agreed because the parts of me that resist help have talked long enough. On the first day, the therapist, soft cardigan, eyes like lake water, asked our names as if she didn't already know, as if saying them out loud might unlock a different door. We told the origin story, then told the one under it, two people who learned early that love is what you do when the house goes quiet. "So you volunteer as furniture," the therapist said to me gently. "And you volunteer as electricity," she said to her. "Both essential. Neither visible unless something goes wrong." We stared at each other and burst out laughing and then cried because it was too accurate to leave untouched. Homework: identify 3 moments a day where we saw the other without a task attached. We were obnoxious about it at first. "I see your forehead crease, and I love it," I announced while she brushed her teeth. "I see your left eyebrow refusing authority," she replied while I tied my shoe. The silliness metabolized into something quieter by day 4. I texted her a photo of the empty bowl by the door and wrote, "I see your keys where they always are, a small dependable miracle." She sent back a picture of the basil and new soil. "I see your rude patience." Therapy didn't fix our drama. It gave it a stage where it didn't have to sneak in through the props. We argued about stupid things in smart ways and smart things in merciful ways. We learned to say, rupture, when the room got sharp, not to be dramatic, but to give us both a word that meant stop cutting. "We can sew this." She told the therapist she was tired of holding her wants like contraband. I told the therapist I was tired of pretending. Later is a currency that always pays out. "Add clocks to your kindness," the therapist said. "Add clarity to your kindness," she added to me. We left with our hands full of small instructions that felt like real tools, not aphorisms. That night, we ordered cheap pizza and ate it on the back steps because the air needed to be part of our progress. "Rupture," she said in a fake dramatic voice, and I pretended to faint into the parsley. We laughed hard enough that the neighbor's cat sat down to watch. The sky went that bruised color that always makes promises. We didn't take a picture. We let the moment exist without proof. At work, I tried a radical experiment, choosing where to be impressive. I was good at the part where numbers turned into narratives. I stopped volunteering for the part where evenings turned into meetings. My boss didn't fire me. Some colleagues seemed almost relieved, as if my boundary gave theirs permission to peek out. At home, she practiced desire without apology. "I want you to ask me on a date like we're new," she said on a Thursday. I wrote an invitation on the back of a receipt and slid it under her coffee cup. "Accompany me to a walk where we touch every leaf," it read. She showed up in her ridiculous hat and took my arm like a movie trope that earned its existence. But drama has muscle memory. We were packing for a weekend at the coast when I found a box in the closet I didn't recognize. Inside, notes she'd written to herself during a lonely winter before we met. Tender, survival-shaped sentences. "Eat something yellow. Call someone who knows you'll laugh. Do not text him." I felt intrusive even reading the third line, as if I'd tripped into a room where I hadn't knocked. She walked in and saw the box open, my face in it. The air changed. "I didn't hide that from you," she said, measured. "I just didn't know how to introduce my old ghosts. I wanted to be magnanimous and I wanted to be human. The human one first. Do you still write these when we fight? I asked, more edge than curiosity. Her eyes softened in a way that said she would tell the truth even if it didn't cast her in golden light. Sometimes, she said. I write, don't fix him. Ask him to show up. And I write, feed yourself anyway. I sat down on the floor because standing felt too proud. Can I put something in the box? I asked. She nodded, surprised. I took the nearest scrap, an old warranty card, and wrote, When you're lonely in the same room as me, tell me out loud so I can stop pretending I don't notice. I put it on top. She exhaled like a kettle clicking off. Thank you, she whispered. We closed the box and put it back where it lives, not out of sight, not on an altar, just reachable. On the coast, the sea threw itself at the shore with the patience of something that knows it wins eventually. We walked until our legs negotiated with our ambition. What's your favorite version of us? She asked, skipping a stone that failed its audition and plopped. When we're kind in the middle, I said. Not at the start for show or at the end for apology. In the messy middle. She smiled. Mine too. We sat on driftwood and let the wind rearrange thoughts we didn't need to keep. On the drive back, we didn't fill the car with strategies. We sang along badly to a song about staying and let that be the only plan. There are days that test the hinges you've oiled. Tuesday was a door flung wide. I forgot our therapy appointment and only realized when she called from the lobby, voice tiny with too much politeness. Hey love, are you on your way? I was across town, elbow deep in a crisis that had my name on a slide deck like a reward and a threat. My stomach fell through a trapdoor. I'm sorry, I said, already moving, already not moving. I can't get there in time. Silence unpacked itself on her end. Okay, she said, and the okay had all the dust of old rooms. I met her at home with flowers that smelled like apology. She put them in water without ceremony. Don't outsource remorse, she said, a callback that made us both wince and grin. I sat down and didn't defend myself. I forgot, I said. We planned it, and I forgot. You matter. I acted like you didn't. Tears rose in her eyes but didn't fall. She's stubborn like that. Thank you for not making me coax that out, she said. Then she did the bravest thing in our house. She asked for repair I could actually do. Can we sit for half an hour with our phones off and tell each other the 5 least glamorous truths from our day? She asked. I need unvarnished. We did. I told her I ate lunch at my desk and felt proud in the dumb way I promised I'd stop. She told me she envied a stranger's ring and then scolded herself for wanting symbols. I told her I read an email 3 times and still didn't understand it and pretended I did. She told me she resented a friend for healing slower than she expected. We looked at each other gentler after that, like the truth had made our outlines more accurate. Later, I emailed the therapist and owned the miss without turning it into a metaphor. We rescheduled. I set 2 alarms with stupid names. Love is at 6 p.m. and don't be late to your own adult life. When the evening softened, I asked if she wanted to open the ghost box. Not tonight, she said. I want to open the wine and the window. We did, and the street performed its regular play: bikes, footsteps, a laugh sliding under a door like a letter. Before sleep, she tucked her feet under my calf, her silent way of saying the day passed, the hinge held. Spring arrived like an apology from the calendar. The lemon tree in Dad's yard recovered its confidence. Our basil became a small forest. We hosted friends and didn't curate the evening into a montage. We let it be loud and spilled and honest. Someone knocked over a glass. Someone cried about a job. Someone asked if we were thinking about next steps. And we both said, in harmony and without rehearsal, this is a step. The room laughed and didn't push. It felt like being seen without being scheduled. Then we broke a promise in a way that scared us. I read her journal. I didn't mean to, in the way people don't mean to touch the wet paint they were warned about. She'd left it open on the couch, a page turned like a palm. I saw my name and curiosity disguised itself as concern faster than a lie. The sentence was kind and sharp. I love him, and I am learning to love the parts that don't perform. She walked in on my eyes where they shouldn't be. Time became thick. My mouth built a defense, and then tore it down in the same breath. I'm sorry, I said. I read a line that wasn't mine. I won't do it again, and I won't ask you to show me. She closed the notebook and sat down with it in her lap like a cat she wasn't sure would stay. Trust is boring until it breaks, she said, not accusing, just accurate. Now we have to make it interesting again. I nodded, throat hot with shame that wanted to be dramatic. What does repair look like? I asked. She surprised me by not prescribing penance. Tell me why you looked, she said. I told her the unhandsome truth. I wanted proof that the work is working. I wanted a score, even if it hurt. I know that hunger, she said softer. I measure too. Let's replace scorekeeping with check-ins we choose. Ask me what you want to know. I'll tell you or tell you I can't. But let my pages be mine. We made another silly, holy sign. Ask, don't snoop. It joined the kitchen defaults like a new magnet on the fridge. 2 days later, I asked the question I was ashamed to need. Are you happy lately? She answered with complexity instead of panic. Most days. Today, yes. Yesterday, 60%. I like us. I like me with you. I am tired. I am hopeful. It felt more real than any sentence a stolen page could have given me. That night, we re-earned a softness. She put her journal on the shelf and I didn't flinch. I left my laptop closed while an email lit up the room like a lightning bug and let it be pretty instead of urgent. We did nothing impressive on purpose and called it a plan. Before the lamp clicked off, she traced a lemon on my wrist where a watch would live. We're on time, she said, and I believed her long enough to sleep. On a Saturday that smelled like new rain and bakery sugar, we wandered through a street fair and accidentally walked into a jeweler's stall. Not a temple of diamonds, more like a desk where a careful person soldered stories to tiny circles of metal. She paused at a tray of bands hammered to look like they'd already lived. These look like they've been dropped and picked up, she said, thumb brushing a dent. The vendor, a woman with graphite on her knuckles, smiled. I like rings that admit to gravity. I watched her trying not to try them on, the way you do when you don't want the day to think it's bigger than you planned. We can look, I said, deliberately casual, deliberately brave. She slid one on. It sat there as if the finger had been waiting politely. My chest did that tight soft thing, equal parts fear and awe. We didn't talk price. We didn't talk dates. We talked finish, matte like fog, polished like tide. She chose matte, then slipped it off and set it back down with a gratitude that made my throat ache. Over coffee on a nearby curb, she leaned her shoulder into mine. I don't want a proposal to be a performance, she said. I want it to feel like a decision that has already been living in the room, and we finally say hello. I nodded, grateful for a language I could hold. I don't want to make a promise I can't keep, I said. But I can promise the work of keeping it. We walked home with nothing in our pockets and something louder in our quiet. In the kitchen we sliced peaches and let the juice run down our wrists, catching it clumsily with paper towels like kids. If we ever do this, I said, I want us to tell the truth in the same breath as the yes. Things like, I will fail at schedule sometimes. You will tilt into silence when you're scared. We will keep meeting in the middle. She grinned. Vows as disclaimers, she said. I'd wear that ring. That night, lying hip to hip, she whispered, if you ever ask, ask on an ordinary day. I kissed her hair and saw 100 ordinary days arranged like lanterns. I didn't plan anything. I let the idea sit on the desk of my heart and cool. The ring woman's graphite thumb had left a faint gray line on her own palm. I thought of that mark and liked it, evidence that even careful work leaves a smudge, and maybe that's how you know it's yours. We fell asleep before designing a future, which felt like the right kind of restraint. Morning could hold the next inch. We moved the couch to paint the wall and found our first winter under there. A lost sock, a receipt from a road trip, a coin from a country we keep promising to visit. She chose a color called Quiet Harbor, I mocked the name and bought 2 tins anyway. We painted in old shirts and an optimism that dripped as much as the rollers did. She left streaks that looked like waves. Mine looked like lists attempting to be art. We're redecorating our arguments, she joked, hair under a scarf, flecks on her cheek. I wanted to lick one off and didn't because the paint wasn't that romantic. Halfway through the second coat, my mother called with news delivered in her efficient nurse voice. "Aunt Sal's fallen," she said. "She's okay but shook. We're at the clinic." I looked at the wall, mid-stroke, and felt the familiar pull to drop everything, be everywhere, become a cape. She put the roller in my hand down gently. "Go," she said, as if saying yes to a value we share, not to a pattern we're trying to soften. "I'll finish this side. Send me a photo of Sal's eyebrows so I can judge the bandage." The clinic air was all antiseptic and waiting. Aunt Sal grumbled about dignity with a wink that told me she wanted the fuss and wanted to scold it too. I sent a ridiculous close-up of gauze that made her cackle. She replied with a photo of the wall, perfectly not perfect, our strokes meeting like a handshake rather than a seam. By the time I got home, she'd taped a note to the door. "You owe me 10 minutes of dancing in front of Quiet Harbor." I paid in full, badly. Later, rinsing brushes in the sink, she said, "I like how we paused without making it a sacrifice." I nodded. "I like how you trusted me not to disappear into the errand." Trust kept showing up wearing new coats, and we kept recognizing it anyway. We ate toast on the floor. She leaned back against the fresh paint and left a tiny smear of hair oil that made me weirdly happy. "Our house will always tell on us," she said, smiling at the mark. "I want that." Before bed I texted Dad the wall color. He wrote back, "Looks like the river when it behaves." I stood there holding the phone, remembering the long way home, the first turns back toward us. She walked up behind me, chin on my shoulder. "You're thinking in paragraphs," she teased. "Write me one with your mouth." I did, a sentence at a time, until the room went quiet in the way that means fuller, not empty. The wall dried. The day did, too. We slept under the soft blue and felt a little steadier for making something visible together that would remember our wrists. The promotion I hadn't asked for arrived disguised as a compliment. "You're already doing the work," my boss said, palms up like generosity. "We can formalize it." The number was good. The hours were a rumor. I took the news home like a stray dog, unsure whether it wanted feeding or a firm boundary. She listened without making a face, which is an art. "What's the story you tell yourself if you say yes?" she asked. "That I've earned being seen," I said. "That I can shape the culture into one that doesn't eat dinner for sport." She smiled. "And if you say no?" "That I'm choosing us," I said, and then corrected myself. "That I'm choosing me with us. That I'm not only useful when applauded." We made tea and put the letter between us like a map. "You can say yes and still be ours," she offered carefully. "But only if the yes includes the fences you and I built." I drafted a response that named my boundaries without apology. We rehearsed it out loud until my voice believed me. In the meeting, I read it with my back on. My boss hesitated as if checking for the trap door and then nodded. "Let's try it your way," he said. I walked out feeling both taller and shakier, like someone wearing new boots for the first time. At home, she popped a single bottle cap like a tiny cork. To new boots. We clinked and didn't pretend the change would be seamless. That week, I protected my evenings like something I'd promised to a better version of me. 2 nights it worked. 1 night it didn't. On the fail night I texted, "I'm about to be late." She wrote back, "I'm about to eat without you." The non-dramatic sentence landed like mercy. When I got in, leftovers waited, warm but not performatively so. We ate facing each other with our feet like parentheses. In therapy, we unpacked what yes means when it isn't a surrender. Name the price you refuse to pay, our therapist said, writing the sentence on a card as if it were prescription strength. I wrote, "Mornings that don't begin with a look." She wrote, "Weekends that feel like strategy meetings." We put the card on the fridge under the lemon magnet. When work tried to knock the magnet off, I'd push back with a smile I'd learned from watching her book a table and insist on the good seats near the light. Boundaries, it turned out, could be charming and firm at once. That Friday we walked to the wharf and split chips again. "How's your story going?" she asked. I thought of the ring stall, Quiet Harbor, Aunt Sal's bandage, the promotion letter that didn't swallow me. "I think it's less about arc and more about chords," I said. "We keep finding the note that makes the others make sense." She wiped salt on my sleeve on purpose and called it affection. The city lights rehearsed their night scene. We rehearsed nothing and felt like we belonged to the script anyway. A message from Ivy, my drifted friend, arrived with perfect timing and imperfect content. "Coffee this week? Miss you." I showed it to her before my stomach could turn it into a secret. She read it and looked at my face rather than the phone. "Do you want to see her?" Honest question, not a trap. I did, for friendship, for repair, for the part of me that hates abandoned bridges. "Only if you're comfortable," I said, and meant it. She considered, then nodded. "Have coffee. Bring back a story, not a ghost." I met Ivy at a cafe that used to be a bookstore, pausing in the doorway to greet the phantom smell of paper. We hugged awkwardly, laughed at the awkward, and sat near a window where the light made everyone look kinder. We talked about jobs and dogs and the mistake of fringe. Then she asked, "How's your heart?" Not prying, just offering. I told a curated version of the truth that still respected it. "We're learning," I said. "We're good often. We argue well. We want ordinary days." She smiled like a friend and not like a rival, and my shoulders loosened enough to notice. "At home," I reported faithfully. "She's okay," I said. More okay than I expected. We were sincere and not flirtatious, and I left before the second coffee. She kissed my cheek as if I'd returned from a hike with the right amount of dirt. "Thank you for bringing me along without making me carry it," she said. We lay on the rug and traded detail. The color of Ivy's scarf, the way the barista spelled my name wrong again and I didn't correct it because being misnamed for 10 minutes is a good reminder that identity is both sturdy and negotiable. That night, she pulled the ghost box down herself. "Let's put something in," she said. She wrote, "I can be generous without abandoning myself." I wrote, "I can hold the past without letting it run the tap." We slid the notes in and closed the lid like a bedtime ritual, a tuck-in for old narratives. In therapy, we told the story and watched the therapist almost clap. "You two are doing public relations for your nervous systems," she said, delighted. "Transparency reduces rumor." We walked the long way home as if we were testing a route that meant something. The river shivered in the streetlight, a dog barked, the heron mural watched with its patient eye. She threaded her fingers through mine and rested her forehead on my shoulder. "Tell me something true," she said, soft as the air between us. I thought of the ring woman's graphite thumb, the dent in the band, the afternoons we'd argued about chairs and chosen ordinary things instead. "I am trying," I said, small and honest. She smiled like answer and permission. "Trying counts," she murmured. "It has to." At our door the Quiet Harbor wall kept its color like a private joke. We made tea and sat on the floor, letting the house hold us with its ordinary smells: toast, lemon, old paint. I opened the ghost box and added a slip. "Keep saying the thing," she wrote. "Return often." We folded them in like quiet vows and closed the lid. We made small plans that sounded like devotion: call Dad on Tuesday, water the basil, stop using work as an excuse for absence. We put these promises on the fridge under the lemon magnet where every day can find them. I slid the ring back on her finger. She traced the tiny dent like a map. We whispered nothing grand, only steady sentences that felt like furniture. "I will show up. I will ask. I will keep learning." We went to bed with the window open and the city exhaling. Outside, a tram sighed, someone laughed, a distant radio fluted a song. Inside, we listed small blessings: a warm mug, a shared plate, hands that fit in the dark. The long way had become a practice, a gentle insistence to choose. We slept the easy sleep that follows a day tended well, not perfect but honest. In the morning we woke together, and the next inch was waiting like a soft, unwritten page. We rose to keep choosing, small and relentless, learning how to protect the ordinary with the tenderness it deserves, and we walked, again, the long way, because it had become our home every single day.